Have you ever felt completely lost, confused, or even betrayed by a woman's sudden emotional shifts? That moment when everything seemed perfect, and then, without warning, you found yourself in an emotional storm you never saw coming. Today, you're about to discover the hidden archetypal forces Carl Jung uncovered that silently drive women's deepest emotional behaviors. Forces so powerful they shape every interaction you have with the feminine world, yet remain invisible to most men. The pain you've experienced in relationships isn't random. That confusion when she pulls away without explanation. That frustration when her words and actions don't align. That deep sense that something fundamental about female psychology eludes your understanding. These aren't failures on your part. They're the result of navigating the feminine psyche without a map of its deepest territories. Jung's revelation about the shadow aspects of female desire offers you something no dating advice or relationship book ever could. A window into the unconscious forces that truly drive female behavior. By understanding these archetypal patterns, you'll finally see beyond the surface of feminine emotion and into the profound psychological currents that have been shaping your relationships all along. This isn't just knowledge, it's psychological illumination that will transform how you experience every woman in your life. To truly understand the dark side of female desire, you need to first grasp what Jung meant by the shadow. Unlike Freud, who saw the unconscious primarily as a repository of repressed sexual and aggressive impulses, Jung recognized something far more complex. The shadow contains not just what we reject about ourselves, but also our greatest potential power. The aspects of ourselves we've denied because they didn't fit our conscious self-image. In women, this shadow operates with particular intensity because of the cultural expectations placed on femininity. You've likely encountered women who present themselves as nurturing, compassionate, and relationally focused on the surface. This is their persona, the mask they show to the world. But beneath this conscious presentation lies the shadow feminine that Jung exposed. Primal, sometimes destructive desires for power, for fusion with the other, for emotional dominance, and paradoxically, for their own psychological annihilation. When you feel confused by a woman's behavior, you're often witnessing this unconscious shadow at work. She may consciously want connection and love, but her shadow might simultaneously sabotage that very connection because it threatens her psychological defenses or triggers her unacknowledged fears. The anima represents another crucial Jungian concept that explains your experience with women. As a man, you carry within you an unconscious feminine element, your anima, that colors how you perceive all women. When you're strongly attracted to a woman, often what's happening is that you're projecting your own anima onto her. You're not seeing her as she truly is. You're seeing your own internal feminine reflected back at you. But here's where things become truly complex. Women aren't just recipients of your anima projection. They embody their own relationship with the feminine archetypes. When your anima projection meets her unconscious relationship with these archetypes, a powerful psychological dance begins that neither of you fully comprehends. Jung identified several key feminine archetypes that exist within the collective unconscious and manifest in all women to varying degrees. The mother archetype represents the nurturing, protective, life-giving aspect of femininity. You've felt its power when a woman cares for you, supports your growth, or creates a sense of home and belonging. But the shadow side of the mother, what Jung called the terrible mother, can devour, control, and infantilize. You've experienced this when a woman's care becomes suffocating, when her protection becomes control, when her nurturing demands your regression. The maiden or core represents youthful feminine energy, spontaneous, pure, and filled with potential. Its shadow manifests as emotional immaturity, manipulation through apparent helplessness, or the refusal to grow and take responsibility. The Amazon embodies female independence and strength. In its shadow form, it can appear as ruthless competition, emotional coldness, or the rejection of vulnerability and interconnection. The Hetaira represents the relational, companion aspect of the feminine. Its shadow can manifest as emotional entanglement without boundaries, relationship addiction, or the loss of self in connection with others. In your everyday interactions with women, these archetypes aren't theoretical constructs. They're living psychological forces that shape behavior in ways that often bypass conscious awareness. When you feel puzzled by a woman's emotional reactions, you're witnessing these archetypal energies at work. Consider how often you've experienced a woman's desire as contradictory. She wants closeness yet pushes you away. She seeks commitment yet sabotages security. She asks for honesty yet reacts negatively when you provide it. These aren't simply mixed signals. They're the manifestation of competing archetypal energies within her psyche. The shadow aspect of female desire that most men fail to recognize is that it's not primarily about you at all. What appears as desire for connection is often, at a deeper level, a woman's unconscious attempt to resolve her own internal psychological tensions. When she seeks fusion with you, she may unconsciously be seeking to heal her own sense of fragmentation. When she tries to change you, she may be projecting aspects of her own disowned shadow that need integration. This creates a profound paradox in female desire that Jung illuminated. Women often unconsciously seek in men both the completion of their own psyche and the reflection of their disowned aspects. This unconscious process can manifest as an intense desire for connection that, once achieved, triggers equally intense fear. You've felt this when a woman passionately pursues you, only to become distant once you fully reciprocate. Now we arrive at the revelation that will fundamentally transform your understanding of female psychology. The darkest aspect of female desire is not its sexual or emotional intensity, but its unconscious compulsion towards psychological vampirism. Jung discovered that when a woman has not integrated her shadow, when she remains unconscious of her own internal contradictions and projections, her desire becomes a form of psychic consumption. She doesn't merely want your presence, attention, or commitment. At an unconscious level, she seeks to absorb aspects of your psychological energy to compensate for what she hasn't developed within herself. This isn't a conscious process. She isn't deliberately manipulating or draining you, but you felt its effects when you've been in a relationship that left you emotionally depleted, confused about your own identity, or carrying emotional burdens that didn't seem to be yours. The unintegrated feminine shadow creates a specific pattern in relationships that you've likely experienced but couldn't name. The cycle of idealization, devaluation, and psychic abandonment. A woman driven by her unconscious shadow first projects her ideal animus, her inner masculine, onto you, seeing you not as you are, but as the embodiment of her unconscious masculine ideal. This creates the intoxicating experience of being deeply seen and desired. But since no human can sustain the weight of such projection, the devaluation phase inevitably follows. As you reveal your humanity, your limitations, needs, and authentic self, you shatter the projection. Her unconscious doesn't recognize this as natural reality, but as a betrayal of the archetypal image. The emotional withdrawal, criticism, or inexplicable dissatisfaction you experience isn't about your failings. It's about the collapse of her projection. The most destructive aspect of this cycle occurs when, instead of recognizing the projection, a woman's unconscious shadow attempts to force you to conform to the projected image. This manifests as subtle emotional manipulation, criticism focused on improving you, or the withholding of approval until you align with her unconscious expectations. This creates what Jung would recognize as a profound spiritual danger for men, the sacrifice of authentic selfhood to maintain connection with the feminine. When you find yourself constantly adjusting your behavior, suppressing aspects of yourself, or feeling that you must earn love through performance or provision, you're experiencing the shadow side of female desire at its most potent. The revelation that changes everything is this: what presents itself as love may actually be, at its unconscious root, a woman's compulsion to control, absorb, and reaffirm her own wounded value. Her shadow, her unlived, rejected, wild aspect, begins to subtly manipulate her relationships. You feel something is wrong but can't name it. You find yourself drained, emotionally infantilized, or held responsible for wounds that aren't yours. This isn't malicious intent, it's archetypal automatism. Jung's insight provides the key to liberation. This pattern isn't personal. It's not a reflection of your worth as a man or her feelings for you as an individual. It's the manifestation of archetypal forces that have operated throughout human history. By recognizing these forces, you gain the perspective to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. The woman experiencing this pattern suffers as much as you do. Her conscious desire for healthy connection battles against unconscious forces she doesn't understand. Her shadow's dominance doesn't bring her fulfillment. It perpetuates her own psychological fragmentation and prevents the very connection she consciously seeks. Now that you've glimpsed the profound depths of the feminine shadow, how will you navigate your relationships differently? Understanding Jung's revelations about female psychology doesn't mean becoming cynical or defensive. Instead, it offers you the opportunity for a more conscious, authentic form of connection that transcends the unconscious patterns that have limited both men and women. The man who truly wishes to love deeply must first know the feminine soul not merely as an object of desire, but as an autonomous archetypal force. You must integrate your own anima, your sensitivity, intuition, receptive aspect, to avoid becoming a victim of a woman's projected shadow. By recognizing that female desire contains both light and darkness, you stop idealizing or demonizing. You begin, then, to love consciously. This consciousness transforms relationships from unconscious reenactments of archetypal patterns into paths of mutual individuation, the journey toward psychological wholeness that Jung identified as our deepest human purpose. When you understand the shadow aspects of female desire, you're no longer controlled by them. You can respond with awareness rather than react from confusion. The woman who intensely desires doesn't just seek a man, she unconsciously seeks the reflection of her wounded soul, and the man who doesn't understand this will be consumed by a love that isn't love but an unconscious ritual of psychological survival. Your new awareness gives you choices you never had before. You can recognize when a woman is relating to her projection rather than to you. You can compassionately maintain your boundaries when faced with the devouring aspect of the feminine shadow. You can discern between a woman who is working to integrate her shadow and one who remains unconsciously controlled by it. Most importantly, you can now see beyond the surface of female behavior to the deeper archetypal currents that shape it. This vision doesn't separate you from women. It allows you to connect with them more authentically, to love them more completely, with eyes wide open to both their light and their shadow. This Jungian understanding also reveals something profound about your own journey. Every relationship struggle you've experienced has been preparing you for this moment of insight. Those confusing arguments, the emotional distance that appeared without warning, the feeling of walking on eggshells, all were invitations to discover these deeper truths. Your frustration was not in vain. It was the necessary tension that would eventually lead you to this revelation. Consider how this knowledge will transform your future interactions. When you encounter a woman's emotional intensity, you'll no longer be overwhelmed by it. Instead, you'll recognize it as the expression of archetypal energies seeking conscious integration. You'll develop the capacity to hold space for this intensity without being consumed by it, offering the rare gift of presence without projection. This doesn't mean you'll become immune to the power of female emotion, nor should you want to be. The feminine, in all its aspects, including its shadow, carries vital energy that can catalyze your own growth. The difference is that now you can engage with this energy consciously, choosing how to respond rather than being unconsciously pulled into archetypal dramas. Jung himself wrote that, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Your relationships with women will continue to transform you, but now that transformation can be intentional rather than unconscious. You can choose which aspects of yourself to develop through these encounters, rather than having your development determined by unconscious patterns. This knowledge also offers you compassion, both for yourself and for the women in your life. When you recognize that much of what you've experienced in relationships has been driven by archetypal forces rather than personal failings, you can release unnecessary guilt and shame. Similarly, when you understand that women are influenced by these same forces, you can offer them compassion rather than blame when their shadow aspects emerge. The path forward isn't about avoiding the feminine shadow. It's about developing the psychological strength to engage with it consciously. This strength comes not from emotional armor or detachment, but from the integration of your own shadow aspects. As Jung taught, the more conscious you become of your own shadow, the less you'll be affected by others' projections. Your relationships can now become laboratories for consciousness rather than battlegrounds of unconscious forces. Each interaction offers an opportunity to observe these archetypal patterns in action, to respond with awareness, and to support both your own individuation and that of the women you encounter. This is the ultimate gift of Jung's insights, the transformation of relationship from unconscious compulsion to conscious co-creation. How has this revelation changed your understanding of your past relationships? What patterns do you now recognize that were previously invisible to you? Perhaps you can see how certain women in your life were acting out particular archetypal energies, or how your own anima projections contributed to relationship dynamics. This awareness doesn't diminish the reality of your experiences. It deepens them, placing them in a context that reveals their deeper meaning and purpose. Every relationship challenge you faced has been preparing you for this moment of understanding, this opportunity to engage with the feminine from a place of conscious awareness rather than unconscious reaction. Share your personal experiences in the comments below. What aspects of the feminine shadow have you encountered? How might this understanding change your approach to current or future relationships? Your insights may help others who are still struggling to make sense of their experiences with female psychology. If this deep psychological insight has illuminated something in your life, give this video a like, subscribe to continue exploring these profound psychological truths, and don't miss our previous videos that build on these Jungian insights. The journey to understanding the feminine psyche is just beginning, and your conscious participation in this knowledge transforms not just your relationships, but your entire experience of what it means to be human in relation to the eternal feminine. Remember that this knowledge isn't about gaining power over women. It's about freeing yourself from unconscious patterns so that authentic connection becomes possible. True intimacy can only exist between two individuals who are consciously engaging with their own shadows and archetypes. By developing this consciousness in yourself, you create the possibility for relationships characterized by mutual growth, authentic desire, and conscious love, the highest expression of human relationship that Jung envisioned as possible.